So Indiaproperty's core promise to customers is kind of symbolized in our byline. We help you, we get you home. Now we strive to do this both in the literal sense of the term and figuratively too. And this was born out of the realization that in the Indian context, property buying is truly a challenge in the last mile. It's not about discovery, but actually getting the transaction to go. So our promise is to help you find the right property and also transact and take it to a logical closure. So in the Indian context, property buying is a little more complicated than it is what it is in more developed countries. And the complication here is on account of several factors, which includes a highly fragmented industry. There's huge lack of transparency, and therefore there's no one truly that you could refer back to help you in the decision-making process and actually take the transaction to closure. And in this process, there are several gaps that spring out of nowhere, which will require you to take several leaps of faith. So our core promise is to help you navigate such schisms in the entire transaction process, and our promise is that we will get you home. So how do we do this is that through a set of products and services which seamlessly migrate the property search process from the online world to the offline world, and then several times in between too. That is, it's a non-linear search process, right? Because it's perhaps the most important purchase decision that people might make in their lives, and it's at least a 6 to 8 month kind of a discovery, search, research, move forward, step backwards kind of process. So it's a very engaging relationship that we seek to build with property buyers on one hand, and we do so through a set of products and services that is both offered online and offline. And that's on the demand side of the marketplace. On the supply side, we offer the most comprehensive marketing solution suite to builders, and by doing so, we are able to attract the best of breed onto the platform, and therefore are able to provide a lot of curated content to buyers, helping them decide in a very neutral way. So our promise is that we help you take a very informed, clean decision, and we don't charge you for it. And therefore, since we don't charge you for it, we're not truly having any agenda to drive in terms of influencing a decision, which should it's purely designed to help you buy as opposed to help us earn more. That's our core promise. So on both the buyer side and on the seller side, we have a differentiated set of products and services which enables us to get the best of breed onto the platform and deliver services which are truly unbiased deliver services which are only to enable the customer's decision making as opposed to maximizing revenue. Indiaproperty is a property buying marketplace, and by definition of a marketplace, we have a buyer and seller, and we're facilitating interactions between the two. And therefore, in the true sense of the term, we have two sets of customers whose needs are being catered to. In our case, we have property buyers on one hand and property sellers on the other. So our value proposition to property buyers is that we promise a completely seamless, easy property buying experience where you can actually go out and buy with confidence. In India, in the Indian context, property buying is fraught with several risks due to the lack of transparency that the industry suffers in general, and also the fragmented nature of the business, because there are several players, several intermediaries who truly come in between, and therefore from a consumer's perspective, there are several stages that needs to be crossed with leaps of faith. We strive to minimize the faith that's required. You just have to depend on a professional service that we can provide in terms of helping the buyer take an informed decision. That's the promise, that's the value proposition to buyers. To sellers, who are builders in our case and agents who are promoting properties, we provide what is perhaps the most comprehensive marketing solution suite in the online space. And by virtue of this, we are able to attract the best of breed onto the platform. And there are several tools that we've developed which help a builder or an agent get the maximum return on investment for his marketing dollar. And in doing so, we curate, we verify and put properties through various staging checks, and these checks are displayed out to buyers so that there's a neutral and an unbiased platform on which buyers can evaluate various property options. So our promise is perhaps the widest and the most curated set of properties as a choice for buyers and assistance in terms of taking the transaction from a search stage to the transaction stage, that is from online to offline for buyers, And on the other side, for sellers, it is the best marketing solution mix to get the maximum return on investment for your marketing dollar. Well, actually, it was quite a serendipitous development in a way, because I happened to meet the founder to pitch for my earlier business. So I've been in various business development roles in consumer durables, in banking, and in financial services, in insurance, etc. So I happened to meet the founder to pitch insurance services to the customer base that Muruga had. But one thing led to another, and then we kind of saw property as an emerging opportunity, and I kind of saw this as a once in a lifetime opportunity for me to truly take a stab at entrepreneurship. There was an established organization, established company, but running at a very, very suboptimal scale, without a very clear business plan, without a clear strategy that had been drawn out on one hand, and on the other, the market was also maturing and readying itself for a complete migration to the digital space from property marketing perspective. So these two trends were quite apparent at that point in time, and I thought it's a now or never opportunity for me, and grabbed it. So that's how this truly happened. This was in 2011 when Indiaproperty was a part of Consum Info Private Limited. Indiaproperty.com was founded by Muruga. He's the founder of the company, along with a clutch of other consumer-facing portals like automobiles, matrimony, and jobs. Property was also founded by Indiaproperty was also founded by Muruga, but he was focusing more on building the matrimony business, and I came on board to build out the Indiaproperty opportunity. It took me about 6 months to completely rejig the business model and then redo the website. We specifically chose to focus on new property marketing, which still remains the sweetest spot in the overall landscape. So that was a very good decision that we took at the right time, and we were able to immediately hit good traction, which caught the interest of current investors in matrimony, who invested in Indiaproperty, and we hived it off as a separate company. We demerged in 2012, and then subsequently have raised 2 rounds of funding, and we are now the fastest growing player in the industry. In a span of 3 years, we are now knocking on revenue leadership in the industry. Well, in a corporate world, you have several things that you typically take for granted, and the moment you step onto an entrepreneurial role, you realize that a lot of these areas where there is significant margin of error is suddenly evaporated. There's just no margin of error anywhere, and therefore you cannot work with the old set of assumptions and the old set of style of working that is normally par for the course in the corporate scene, corporate sense of the term. That doesn't apply here anymore. You own every day, and it's your responsibility to ensure that every day's resources is deployed to the most optimal extent, thereby delivering the company value for the enterprise and the company. In the corporate sense of the term, in the corporate world, you could be doing nothing for quite some time and still get away unnoticed. That's not the situation here. So to draw a parallel, it is like driving down a hill road where on one side you have a steep fall, and you can't even afford to take your eyes off the road even for a second. So this entrepreneurial journey is like driving down the hillside with no brakes. Whereas a corporate world is like cruising on the highway. It's a straight highway, just go to put it on cruise control, and it takes care of itself. So that's a big difference here. This is, of course, in a very metaphorical sense, but when it comes to running the business daily, it requires a very, very hands-on, do-it-yourself approach initially, and with scale, the challenges change. Accordingly, you need to exhibit the flexibility and the maturity to take on these challenges and then optimize it at various levels. So whereas in a corporate world, it's typically a ready-made set of variables where a lot of things are already in place. It's a question of either scaling up on one dimension, or it's a question of optimizing on one dimension. Whereas in an entrepreneurial setup, it is scaling, optimizing on multiple dimensions, and that requires you to constantly keep thinking, constantly reevaluating choices, and possibly quickly realizing errors and taking course correction immediately. And these are steps. These changes, if they are delayed, it doesn't even matter sometimes in the corporate world. But here it could prove fatal. These are the key differences that are there between the two worlds altogether. Okay, specifically with the business in context, I think the most important learning is it's extremely important to get the right team to back you. So hiring is a very important activity. In fact, a significant amount of my time goes into hiring the right team. And when I hire, I typically look only for attitude and not for skills. While if the package comes with the right attitude and skills, that's the best case situation to be in. But more often than not, you'll see a lot of people with the right attitude, but not necessarily the right skills. And the skilling can also always be done, but it's very difficult to inbuild the right attitudes into a person. Particularly in the context of a startup or when you're starting a new venture, there is no proven model of where someone would have already learned what the skills that are required to succeed in the current or a new business scenario. And therefore, it will be fallacious to truly look for someone with the right skills. So it's very important to look for people with the right attitude and hire the people with the right attitude. We can always skill them at the appropriate time. And that's one big learning. So that's an area that we also did very well. So I'll touch upon two areas where we did well and one area where I think we could have done a lot better. The first area where we did well is the hiring the team with the right skill and mindset, right attitudes and mindset. And that's really, we have perhaps the best sales team in the industry today. Our product management team and the technology team is the most productive and the most efficient. As a company, we've been the most capital efficient amongst all competitors. We've grown with the least amount of capital, which all reflects upon the kind of DNA that's got imbued in the organization, driven by the attitude of the people who have come in. And the governing attitude is to truly make a difference in every day that they work here, as opposed to checking in and checking out on clocking time. So that's an area that we've done very well. So hire for the right attitude. We can always skill the people. The second area where we did very well is one of the reasons why a lot of innovation that has truly come out from both from a product side and services side, and the reason why we were able to identify the true pain point in the property buying process, was that we were constantly experimenting with various scenarios, and several of these experiments have failed, but it has actually helped us learn and get closer to the true pain points that the consumer is experiencing. So it's very, very important to keep experimenting. It doesn't matter if you fail all the time, but every failure is that you are that much better towards achieving success, or towards finding the right solution to a particular problem that you have. So always have the gumption to experiment a lot, take risks, take bold calls. All these will add up at some point. And for all you know, it could be serendipitous too. You could stumble upon several surprise discoveries which could totally change some of the assumptions that you have on the business. It's happened for us 2-3 times. In fact, some of our best innovations have come out of serendipitous discoveries in the course of experimenting on something else. So that's something that I've learned to kind of inculcate in the team. Constant experimentation is something that is very, very good and is to be encouraged. And an area where we have not done so well is perhaps PR. While the saying is that any PR is good PR, I didn't truly subscribe to it initially. But PR could make all the difference in a typical startup environment. The right PR gets you the right attention, helps you reach the right set of investors, helps you reach the right set of people in the startup ecosystem, and therefore it has a multiplier effect in your overall marketing strategy. So it's very important to build a reasonably well thought through PR strategy and keep revisiting it, course correcting it, keep it in tune with what is happening in the environment. Try to ride the wave as much as possible. If there is something that's happening outside, if it's an opportunity that your business could get attached to it, and therefore you get a multiplier in your PR, that's great. Don't even ignore such opportunities. So that's an area that we could have possibly done a little better. But these are 3 learnings that I have. Hire the right people with the right attitude, allow them room to experiment, encourage experimentation, and ensure that there's learning from failures. And third, focus on PR. Let me start with enunciating the differences in our business model, right? So Indiaproperty is actually we built out to enable property purchase, vis-a-vis solving for discovery. Now, online real estate classifieds is all about solving for discovery, and we realized much earlier in the game that the true pain point in India is not about discovery, but in actually transacting. And that realization came through a lot of interaction with customers, and by peering through data, and also figuring out the slippages that were happening between lead generation to actual transactions. And we saw an opportunity in building assistance as a key differentiator in enabling the consumer's transition from a search research phase to a close to transaction phase, right? So that's where the Indiaproperty model is truly hinged on. Indiaproperty solves to enable purchase, as opposed to most of our competitors who are essentially solving for discovery of property. Now, in the Indian context, like I pointed out earlier, the biggest pain point is in actually getting to transact. And that is when several questions come up for which the answers are obtained from either friends, relatives, or colleagues who have walked that path before. And therefore, it is always a suboptimal situation from the consumer's mind. So for a customer, therefore, using Indiaproperty services is about not just searching and researching about a property or a locality, or getting legal assistance in transacting. It is about someone helping you walk the entire path, right from organizing site visits, getting a home loan done, getting home insurance done. There is a property search assistant who is dedicated to your requirement, who will do field search and online search and help you evaluate various options. Getting answers to questions which are normally obtained only when you visit the site is all available through our service. 3-dimensional walkthroughs, experiential tools by which you can truly evaluate whether a particular living space works for you as a family or not. All these are tools that have been developed, and it's available only on Indiaproperty, and that's where the customer's experience is truly differentiated here. So even before you move to phase 2 of your search, so phase 1 is typically identifying parametrically which are the properties that meet your requirement. Phase 0, as I would call it, is about researching and understanding what property buying is all about. There are a lot of customers who don't even understand the basics of getting a home loan for your property. They don't understand how to evaluate locality 1 versus locality 2. So what we have put in place as an interaction process with customers is a handholding scheme that navigates the customer through these stages. So when you are just looking or beginning to have property in mind, what are the things that you need to understand? Once you started searching, what are the things that you need to evaluate? What are the things that you need to look for in a property? What kind of questions you need to ask? Do we have those questions already answered, and therefore the information can be given upfront to you in evaluating or eliminating what doesn't work for you? Then moving it forward to site visits, coordinating the physical site visit, getting the legal documentation checked, getting a home loan organized for your property, insuring the property, the asset that you are getting yourselves exposed to by taking a loan. If you're not taking a loan, you're still buying an asset. It's important you protect the asset, and therefore we have a customized home insurance solution. All of this is done through a single window. And this nobody else is doing in the market. So that's where truly Indiaproperty's differentiated offering for a buyer comes through. Now, I pointed earlier that we have 2 customer sets that we are catering to. One is the buyer, the other is the seller. On the seller side, what Indiaproperty offers is a complete marketing solution set. Now, it's not just about creating an online listing alone, which is what most online real estate classifieds is all about. We go beyond creating listings. It's about putting together a comprehensive marketing campaign for a project that the builder is going to launch, or has already launched, or is trying to liquidate quickly. It's already completed and he's not able to sell fast enough, so on and so forth. So we put together a complete solution specific to that particular project, which includes online presence, which includes 3-dimensional walkthroughs using a platform which can be deployed at non-internet touch points too. It includes experiential centers. It includes property fairs, trade fairs that we organize in India and abroad to truly reach out to serious buyers. So it's a comprehensive marketing solution set which is not being offered by anybody else in the industry today, and therefore the builder gets the maximum bang for every marketing rupee that is being spent as far as marketing that project goes through Indiaproperty. So we completely straddle the launch to this pre-launch marketing, launch marketing, ongoing construction marketing, and post-completion marketing phases of a project. And we are the only player to offer a complete end-to-end market, transact, buy solution to builders. So this is where we truly are differentiated. We are not just about generating leads and letting the builder sales team focus on closures. We have a transactions team which enables transactions, which helps the builder sales more effectively. Similarly, we have an assisted service where buyers pay us a subscription fee, not necessarily linked to success of buying a property. So this is a flat fee that is paid to Indiaproperty by property buyers to help them in their property search. And as a result, what happens is that the set of recommendations that are given out to these buyers are highly curated and have already gone through the various sieves that the consumer has in terms of evaluating alternatives. The conversion rates are much higher on Indiaproperty's leads to builders. So this is where truly the differentiation comes. So for the buyer, it is about a complete end-to-end solution stack that we offer, which straddles from start of search to finalization of the home and transaction closure, including registration. For marketers, for builders, it is about the most comprehensive marketing platform that you can get, which straddles both online and offline marketing from the property selling perspective. Specifically in the property marketing context, I think the non-desktop device, which is either a mobile phone or a tablet, is significantly influencing the way consumers are initiating engagement with brands, and very specifically in the property buying context, it is about usage of mobile phones, specifically with respect to a contextual framework of property buying. Because property buying is largely having a very strong offline element, hybrid search process, mobile phones become very important in ensuring the continuity between the online and offline space is done seamlessly. And it's therefore very important for someone to have a very well thought through mobile strategy to ensure continuity of this experience. So some of the technology trends that truly will enable this migration but before we get into that, I think it's important we understand that in the real estate space or in property buying, the frequency of purchase is perhaps once in your lifetime, as far as property buying goes. And if it's going to be rental, it's probably once a year. So it's a very low velocity transaction use category, and therefore the usage of apps has to be very intelligently done. It's very important to have a very functional, high quality mobile web experience, which can seamlessly migrate a regular user onto the app experience. These two are absolute essentials. These are hygiene elements to have. But on top of that, the important elements that need to be leveraged in building out this experience is the ability to contextually define that moment in time when someone is truly looking for property, because the mobile phone is ubiquitous. Wherever you go, you know which locality the customer is going to be in. It is very easy, and it's quite it'll be right to feed in information which is relevant to the customer's property buying requirements. It could be geocentric, it could be geospecific, it could be time specific too. So these are important variables that are likely to play out and will help a player differentiate well. We are specifically focusing on building an engaging search engine, which is not your typical parametric search, but kind of intelligently comes out with recommendations on your property requirements, driven largely through the mobile app. This is driven largely by the big data analytics and machine learning that we have put in place at the back end, which picks together information relevant to a particular individual's property requirements and marries it with what's happening at a sub-universe for that particular locality, and also correlates it with the larger city level trends, and comes out with a set of recommendations not just on properties but also on useful information relevant to your research phase. which usually is given out by, let's say, a broker or by the builder. So information on price trends, information on heat maps, information on what kind of rental yields are likely to yield out from a particular property, which locality is better than another locality from a medium-term, long-term perspective. A lot of this research is, churned out from the data that we have and is fed out in a very contextually relevant framework to customers to enable property buy. So that's an example of how I see mobile influencing property search and also property marketing going forward. So that's a very key area that we would be focusing on, which is how to marry the capabilities of the mobile phone, both from a geo sensitivity and also from utilizing the various devices that most smartphones have, including accelerometers. You'll be able to exactly pinpoint using a camera, etc. So using these features, we are building out a set of capabilities in the mobile app, which adds a lot of value in the property site visit phase. So, for example, when a customer goes to a particular project site today, even taking notes is difficult. So automatic annotation of notes, automatic video review playbacks, which can be shared with family and friends, etc., are all features that are being built, which will be largely driven off the mobile phone. So mobile is a very important change that is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. The second change that I truly see happening is the emergence of data-led modeling. Now, over the last 2-3 years, most players have invested in high-quality data being assimilated, tracking of property information, being put in place. So, data sciences is going to play a very important role. So, marry this with augmented reality, put in intelligent recommendations. Then, what you have is a very potent mix of information which can be fed in a very contextually relevant timing. For property buying. That's something that we are truly excited about and we are working on. So these two are really key trends that I see coming out in the near future. The third, of course, is more regulatory and build an environment, regulatory environment led. Once the real estate regulations are out, then there'll be a lot more compliance that would be kind of enforced in the entire ecosystem, and that will require a lot of technology enablement for actual last mile implementation, both from an agent's perspective and from a builder's perspective. So these are three big trends that is going to specifically influence the way real estate is being marketed, going forward. Coming to your second question in terms of what trends that one needs to look out for, particularly in the online space, I think the biggest trend, and the most obvious trend that's happening, is the shift to mobile. How can your product or service truly leverage the power of a mobile phone, be it a smartphone or be it a regular phone, in terms of offering a user experience which is completely unparalleled, which is extremely contextual, and it is very relevant from the need that you're trying to solve for. So this is a very important element to keep in mind while building out your product or service. How can ideally, if it can be largely mobile led, that's truly the way to go, because most Indians are now accessing the internet. In fact, first time users are coming on board to the internet only through the mobile phone. So that's a very important trend that cannot be ignored. The second trend that is very important is to marry in analytics into what is being offered. So regular search results, regular parametric search results are passé. I mean, that everybody gives. How do you take in parametric information and marry that with subjective information and come out with intelligent suggestions is what is going to truly define a very engaging user experience for any search context, be it real estate, be it automobiles, be it anything that is of current use in the classified sense of the term. And therefore, the use of predictive modeling techniques and using big data to come out with the relevant set of recommendations is going to be a key differentiator going forward. In the real estate context particularly, we've had phenomenal success in terms of building in predictive modeling algorithms, which kind of gives us suggestions which are most likely to get clicked as opposed to any parametric match. That itself has given us a lift of almost 15% in terms of click-through rates in some of the suggested properties that some of the inbound marketing that we send out. So that's just to give you an example of what kind of lift you could get in your customer engagement if you are able to meld in a great degree of intelligence driven by big data and analytics. These are two important trends that cannot be ignored from any classifieds in the online space. The third is there is clearly a shift towards curated content. So whatever area you're trying to build out, it's important to bring in an element of curation, which in the Indian context is becoming a big differentiator. Otherwise, the platform is subject to misuse, and there is a lot of lack of credibility that immediately accrues to the promise being made. And so 10 years back, just getting information online with sellers putting up whatever they want was fine. But today it is about curated information which is fed out in a context that is relevant to the consumer's use situation. So curated data fed out in relevant context, driven by intelligence from a predictive modeling system, is something that is going to be hygiene 2-3 years from now. So data sciences and analytics layers built on data is going to be crucial, and it's important that you focus on this in building out any classified business going forward. So compared to our competitors, Indiaproperty is the only player who actually offers a full stack property buying solution. It's an end-to-end solution that we offer to property buyers, starting from search to the last stage of transaction, which is the registration of documents. So we are the only player who's doing this full service without a commission income coming in, which means that unlike a broker or any other agent who is playing in the market, we do this without charging any success fee, and therefore is the most neutral platform to evaluate in a very neutral way various property alternatives that are available. So our solution is not only enabling buyers take a complete and unbiased view of the property, number one, move it forward to a transaction in terms of the preliminaries leading to a transaction in terms of site visits, arranging for financing, arranging for home loans, getting a legal opinion, and then finally getting the registration done. So that's on the buyer side. And on the seller side, we offer the most comprehensive marketing solution suite, which straddles both online campaigns, offline campaigns, experience centers, international and domestic property shows where experience centers can lead to an online purchase. We offer the only online booking platform where a buyer can actually zero down into a particular apartment unit that interests them, takes a virtual walkthrough of the apartment online, and choose to buy online. So this is the complete buying solution that we put in place, and that's the first in the industry, which builders can use to market their properties. The first challenge is getting the right talent to help define these data structures and build the models. So that was an initial challenge that we had, but it took us almost some 6 months to get the right set of people to man the data sciences lab and put together the data structures and start capturing the data. Modeling and building predictive algorithms on top of it is the next phase, for which we have taken the help of academic institutions also to collaborate and work with us. So that's how we kind of build this in-house capability. But going forward, we would like to we will be investing significantly in both human resources and in terms of tools to sharpen the edge that we have here in this area.
And you talked about,
we also have a complete in-house three dimensions renditioning team. We have a visualization team which is fully in-house. We have a virtual center which has been developed fully in-house. So most of our R&D is in-house. We have a research lab here. It starts off from our focus on experimentation. So I encourage the team to keep making bold experiments, testing out various hypotheses. And as a result, we've had several developments that have spawned from these tests. For instance, our virtual walkthroughs have been fully developed in-house. The entire platform is developed in-house. That is therefore melding its ability to be deployed at multiple touch points, not necessarily even online. And we were able to do it because it has been developed in-house and we're not dependent on any other service provider to ensure compatibility, etc. So there is a lot of merit in developing new technology in house. It does pay off in the long run. It gives you the ability to price the products up, appropriately, and also creates an entry barrier from competition for quickly replicating. So you're not essentially tied in with a particular platform. It's your own platform, and therefore it gives a lot of pricing power in the market. Some of the products that came out of our research labs. First is our 3D walkthrough renditioning engine. We developed the first virtual site visit terminal, which is essentially a gesture-driven walkthrough experience. We don't need any mouse, you don't need a touch screen, but it's akin to someone walking into a particular apartment and turning his head around. So as in when you make human movements, the entire screen rotates around you, and it's not a unidimensional screen, but it's actually a U-shaped screen, similar to what you would see from the eye. It's got a 270-degree view of vision, and the images move in tandem. The idea is to replicate what you would get on a true site visit. So imagine sitting in New York or New Jersey, you would be able to completely take a walkthrough of an apartment in Bangalore in high definition. And it's not based on an Oculus kind of a device, which means that you don't have those issues of dizziness, etc. And property buying is typically a family event. I mean, you have 2 or 3 people simultaneously exploring the property. So our technology enables multiple people to view the same interaction as it happens, and therefore it's as close as it can get to a true site visit. A site visit is perhaps the most important stage in the property buying process. If the site visit is good and answers all your questions, you typically go ahead and sign the dotted line. So we've kind of focused on building and deploying site visits electronically at multiple touch points. And therefore, from the marketer's perspective, the model flat or the site visit as a tool is now mobile. It's not limited to only the project site, but can be deployed across the world. And that's truly given a huge leg up to the marketing efforts of most builders. Well, at that point, we clearly realized the need to invest behind building this business. And this investment would need to come in significant quantums, and therefore, if it were to continue as a combined entity, there would be constraints on not only capital that could be deployed into the company, but also on the kind of management bandwidth that could be devoted to truly do justice to the opportunity that was available. So back in 2011, the investors and the founder, we clearly saw reason, and it made sense to completely demerge and create a separate entity, raise funds for this entity, so that the business can operate in an unfettered way, both from a capital raising perspective and also in attracting talent in the market. And it really paid off very well. So when Indiaproperty was a part of Consum, the revenue run rate from at that point to what it is now has grown more than 20 times in about 36 months. In terms of customer base, we now have over 8 million registered users using our services. From builders who are using our platform to market, we have about 5,000 paid builders who are using the platform. That's over a 34-35% share of the market as far as builders go. But the category itself is underpenetrated. The category is only at a 25-30% penetration. Therefore, we are truly a leader in the builder marketing space of the opportunity space. Assisted search, for instance, has helped us. We now have close to about 6,000 paying customers who are using assisted search to enable them in their property buying process. This is a truly differentiated offering which nobody else has been able to replicate to the extent of success that we've had. So all this has been possible thanks to the capabilities that the company has been able to build as an independent entity. The capital that's been raised, the investors who backed the company, etc., has been possible only because of the post demerger. Well, it was a very small team at that point. I think we were about 20-25 employees. So So when we moved out and started Indiaproperty as a separate entity, it was almost like a shot in the arm for everybody. That was a great morale booster because there was serious money being raised and significant commitment from the management side. That really helped the employees truly to focus on building the company out. And from an early stage, from about 25-30 employees, we moved to about 600 employees in less than 12 months. Then from then on, now we have close to about 1,100 employees, and that's happened in over the next 24 odd months. So that kind of growth is while it has its own challenges, it also serves as a positive it creates a feeling of healthy growth. It builds in a lot more ownership and confidence in the company's ability to grow and deliver on the promises and plans being made to investors. So that truly helped in terms of boosting employee morale and bringing in commitment towards working towards a common goal. I think two important aspects that one needs to keep in mind while raising funds. First is while most investors bring in capital, what do you get beyond capital is a question that the entrepreneur should clearly understand and ask. So this could mean in terms of strategic guidance, it could be in terms of domain expertise, it could be in terms of ability to network and open doors for subsequent rounds of funding, etc. So it's important to choose an investor who has the capability or has had track records of actually supporting companies from a very early stage to a much later growth stage. And choosing your investor is perhaps the most important decision that you would be making in addition to building out your business. And here the two very important criteria are to choose people who can add value beyond bringing capital, particularly in the areas of maybe domain expertise or bringing in strategic value or helping you connect with the right set of next stage investors. And second, someone who can back you in the long run, who has necessarily access to reasonably patient money and not truly short-term money. So these are two important factors that one needs to consider. This, of course, is in addition to the awareness of the documentation that goes into fundraising, etc. I mean, it's very important to get legal help and ensure that you understand what you're truly getting into. The business evolved. Our promises and the products and services that we built has changed from what it was 3 years back to what it is now. And the rebranding kind of reflects that in many ways. So the key change that truly happened between when we started Indiaproperty to what it is now is that we also started as a standard classifieds, online classifieds play, which was essentially solving for discovery. And then we realized in the process of building this business out that the bigger pain is in actual transactions, and therefore build the model to solve to enable transactions. And that's a big shift. So it took us about 18 to 20 months to completely have all ends and all links in this entire purchase chain completely sewed in tightly in a seamless way. So what a consumer goes through at Indiaproperty is an online search which moves seamlessly into the offline mode, comes back to online, does multiple ups and downs, and then moves forward to a transaction and closure. So it took us about 18-20 months to build this out. So when we started and demerged Indiaproperty and focused on new property marketing, we branded our promise was this is the best place to buy new property. And so from that promise we moved to actual enabling purchase, and therefore the value being delivered to the customer was not just about finding the right property, but actually transacting and buying this property. And our communication had to reflect this change, which is why we walked the path of communicating that we get you home. Now, we truly get customers to get home, both in their property search process and which ends in getting a home, right? So it kind of communicates both literally and figuratively the promise that we are making to customers. And the consumer's mindset goes through various emotional experiences while actually navigating through this process of buying a property. We tried to encapsulate it in our commercial, our first TV commercial. Actually, we went on air almost 30 months after demerging. So we didn't do any ATL campaigns at all and relied largely on word of mouth marketing to drive traffic to the website. The first time we went on air, we went with the rebranded promise, where we communicated a fresher, bolder tagline where the promise was, we get you home. And that is a very strong position to take. And it took us almost 18-20 months to build out the capability to back that promise, which is why it took us so much time to come out with the campaign. But now the complete service is fully set and it's fully operational in the south of India, and it's resonated very well with consumers and builders alike. It's perhaps the most talked about marketing campaign that has been launched by the online real estate players here, and the kind of lift that we had in traffic and engagement matrices are only supporting this the promise that the communication is actually giving out. So the TVC, if you'd seen it, actually shows how a young boy is overcoming his fears of actually swimming. Property buying is similar in a metaphorical way. It's like jumping into a pool without truly knowing how to swim. So you get that sinking feeling that you've made a mistake, and someone helps you get across and reach out. So we are that guiding hand, is the promise that Indiaproperty makes. So our core promise is that we get you home, and we deliver on that promise through a set of interventions, products, and services which help you completely navigate through the entire chain of property buy process. So the rebranding had to communicate it, and that's the reason why we changed the logo and the byline from a brand promise perspective. We are now the dominant player in the South. We are the clear number one player in South. By South, I mean the 4 southern states, and we are a very close number 2 in the West geography. Within the builders segment of the opportunity landscape, we are the market leader. Our immediate plans are to scale up our presence in North and in East. Essentially, the formula that has worked well for us in the South needs to get replicated out in the North and East. But these two geographies are completely different markets from a consumer purchase psyche perspective. The South market is more an end-use market, whereas the North and East are more investor-driven markets, and therefore the products that have essentially worked here will not necessarily work there. We are thinking through our strategy there. But our immediate scale-up plans is to scale our presence in these two markets. We are currently present in about 22 towns. By presence, I mean we have a physical team in each of these 22 cities. We plan to take this up to about 50 cities in the next 12 to 18 months time frame. And we also are planning to scale up our presence in international markets. So we have recently piloted an experience center as a concept. Now, the experience center essentially is a touch point. It's a multi-brand property touch point, which offers a completely virtual augmented reality based experience on property search to buyers. And these experience centers are deployable at multiple places. It could be at a high footfall area like in an airport, or in a mall, or as a point of sale tool at the builder's sales office, or at the project site, or in international shows. So we intend scaling up the presence of experience centers both nationally and internationally, specifically in the United States, in Southeast Asia and the GCC countries. We intend opening experience centers, which are essentially multi-brand property marketing outlets, with our builder customers using these outlets to create experiences and enable transactions for NRI customers. So that's the second area of expansion that we're focusing on. The third area that we would be really focusing energies on is on product development and technology in terms of enabling the shift to mobile. We are significantly ahead of the curve there. I think what we recently launched, which is Discover, is essentially a search engine which brings answers to you based on intelligent data driven through machine learning and predictive analytics. So we intend investing to fine tune that further. And lastly, in terms of building the brand, in terms of marketing investments, we've just done our first burst about 4 months back. We intend backing this up and taking the brand national across the country, which will enable our geographic expansion in both the North and East too. I think there are several traits that are important for an entrepreneur to truly nurture, and amongst them, the most important one is the ability to stand up and resume fighting once you're knocked down. Be prepared for multiple knockout blows that the entrepreneurial journey is going to proffer you. You need to have the ability to stand up and start fighting again, and that essentially means you don't give up. Never say die attitude approach is extremely important, and that's my single biggest learning and advice. The answer is just around the corner. All it takes is that extra jab, the extra push, the extra 2 more minutes of jog, or any way you want to put it, to reach the answer. So whenever you're completely down or you're knocked down, don't give up. It's important you get up and you start moving, even though it might be slow. It doesn't matter. The second thing that is important is that you need to have an open mind to keep experimenting. Failures are not necessarily setbacks, but are actually stepping stones to fine tune whatever you're working on or building out. The failures are the best teachers. So never be afraid to fail. Never be afraid to experiment. These are two key messages.